Hi, everyone, and welcome to GoLean6Sigma.com's webinar. It's great to have you with us today. Thanks for spending some quality time with us. Hundreds of people have registered for this webinar, and we love that everyone is very interested, especially in the visual management webinar. Lean and Six Sigma are the go-to improvement methods used by leading organizations all over the world to drive operational excellence, delight customers, achieve their missions, and build problem-solving cultures. And every month we craft webinars just for you, our global learner community. Webinars that simplify process improvement concepts and tools so that you can apply them more easily and get results. Today's webinar is titled How to Harness the Power of Visual Management. I'm Tracy O'Rourke, and I'm managing partner at GoLean6Sigma.com. And today's presenter is also a managing partner at GoLean6Sigma.com, my colleague, the wonderfully talented, innovative, and lifelong learner, Elizabeth Swan. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Tracy. It's nice to be welcome.
A little background on Elizabeth. She's co-host of the Just in Time Cafe podcast. She's co-author of the Problem Solvers Toolkit. She's an instructor for UC San Diego's online Greenbelt program. She's been a Lean Six Sigma consultant, master black belt coach, and trainer for over 30 years. And aside from 3 decades in the business, Elizabeth has also performed with Improv Boston and has been very successful at applying process improvement and improvisation. It's a good combination. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Tracy.
So a few housekeeping notes before we begin. At the end of the presentation, we'll have a question and answer session. You can also ask questions anytime by entering them in the chat area through the webinar. We welcome your participation, and we will ask you to vote in some polls. There's also a question area, but please use the chat area throughout this webinar. If we don't get to all of your questions during the webinar, we'll answer and post them in the GoLean6Sigma.com forum so you can see them there. And our most important question people always ask, are the webinar slides available? Yes, they will be available for free for introductory level and exclusive Go-Getter members for intermediate, advanced, and leadership. Okay, so please join us for our first activity by sharing in the chat window. Where are you from? You guys have registered from all over the world, and we'd love to know where you are right now. So please type in the chat section where you're joining us from today. So we have Ana Santa Maria from Guatemala, Michelle from Arizona, Alessandra from San Diego, my hometown, Emily Kuhn, Kansas City, Heather from Portland, Lee from Detroit. We've got people from Charlottesville, North Carolina, Surrey, British Columbia, near Vancouver. We have people from Brazil, Thiago from Brazil, Juan Carlos from Mississauga, Canada. And let's see, we've got lots of people joining this webinar from all over, but a lot of people from the United States on this one. So Elizabeth, let's take it over to you because we know that their time is valuable. So let's get started.
All right. Thank you, Tracy. I love my warm introduction. I'm happy to be here with all of you from mostly the States, but also Brazil and a few other spots. I heard Canada. Thanks for joining. As Tracy said earlier, we've both been with GoLean6Sigma.com since its inception. We founded GoLean6Sigma.com with a clear purpose: revolutionize the way people learn process improvement, making it easy for everyone, everywhere, to build their problem-solving muscles. We have 3 core values. We believe in cultivating community. That's you. You guys are part of our community. We also believe in having a servant's heart. We are here to be of service to you. That's what these webinars are about. We believe in having a trailblazing spirit. As Tracy said, we are lifelong learners, and we are never complacent with the status quo. So let's put those values to work. With this webinar, our goal is to make sure you can tell all your coworkers exactly what visual management is all about. You're going to be able to clarify all the ways visuals can make a difference in your workplace. You're going to be able to tell people why it's so critical to have visuals, why it makes such a difference and can make work life so much better. You'll also have some awesome examples in your pocket so you can jumpstart your own visual management efforts. You'll be a visual management star. You'll be so great you'll need an agent. So let's take a look at our agenda and how we're going to do all that. So we're going to find out answers to these questions. What is visual management? Why does it matter? What questions does it answer? What does it look like? What are some good guidelines? Okay, I'm going to start with a story. This is my house. It's a great house, but there's a problem. The front door was the entrance to the house back in 1776 when the house was built hundreds of years ago. But now we've got a driveway and we only use the back door, and the front door is essentially sealed up. But since there's still a brick path from the sidewalk, it kind of looks like this is still an entrance. So UPS and FedEx have instructions like no signature required and which door to use, but sometimes there's new guys or they don't always check, and sometimes they don't know where to go. So the solution is my husband left a sign for delivery people, right? Problem solved? No. So he's always getting annoyed with the delivery people. Don't they see the sign? And I tell him, yeah, but they see it after they've walked up the entire path, reached the door, whereupon they drop the package and head back to their truck. They're not going to do any more walking. So I get the evil eye from him, and then we get another package delivered on the front step. So the problem is the way we're attempting visual management. And that's what we're going to deal with today. How are we using visual management, or are we using it at all? So let's explore all the reasons why I'm right, my husband's wrong. I'm kidding, but it's my story, so I get to tell what I want. Okay, what is visual management? Visual management is simple visual tools that enable process understanding at a glance. When typing that, the new latest PowerPoint grammar correction tool suggested that I say instantaneously instead of at a glance. But the power is in the glance. You have to see what's happening. The primary purpose of visual management is to immediately understand the current situation. I heard a quote recently I really like. It was, visual management creates a workspace that speaks for itself. It emphasizes graphics over numbers and words. It's clear and actionable right where it needs to be. It's maintained by the people who do the work. They know it best. They need to be able to be the first to detect when things are not normal. And visuals also need to relate to strategic goals and measures of the business. So you may have heard a number of terms around the concept of visuals, which can be confusing. We are addressing visual management, and that includes things like visual workplaces, visual thinking. There's also a term, visual controls, which is an aspect of visual management. David Mann, who's published books on visual management, says visual controls primarily show expected process performance versus actual process performance. And they highlight delays and interruptions in the work. And this often involves control charts and other graphs so we can observe process trends. And we'll touch on that a bit, but we won't be diving into charts and graphs in depth. This is an introductory webinar addressing visual management. We won't cover every possible tool and application, but we'll start with how it answers 4 basic questions. The first question it answers is, what is this? We use visual management to identify parts, materials, work areas. We let people know, what am I looking at? The next question it answers is, how are we doing? We use it to inform ourselves and others of the process status. Are we meeting our goals? Are we falling short? And if so, where? There's critical information for process improvement in the status of the process, how the process is performing. And we need to identify waste. We have to know where the problems are, and visuals help us do that. The third question is, how does it work? We use it to instruct people on how a process works, how to navigate work areas, where to put things away, how to organize the storage and see when things are missing, how to perform tasks, what comes first, what comes second. And lastly, it answers the question, what's next? we use visual management to plan, and where are we according to the plan? That's also key to problem solving. If we're behind, what needs to happen? So you'll see some overlap as we answer each of these questions, which is good. Visuals should work together. So we'll start by getting a sense of the experience which all of you attending this webinar have some background in. Or actually, let's get a sense right now what your background is. And my question for you, and I'm going to put a poll up shortly, what is your biggest current use of visual management? So let me launch the poll for you. Let's see, poll and launch that. Okay, so Tracy, what do you see as the biggest use of visual management when you're out there with clients?
Well, I do have one that I see very often, but I will tell you my favorite, and that is when people use visual management to inform people of process status, because that tells me that they're making the process more visible and the status of that process more visible. And because I work in transactional environments so much, all those processes are typically invisible. So I get really excited about that. But I will have to answer your question, I will say I see A and C happen a lot.
Okay, so let's see what these folks.
Oh, good. So what is happening here is B, my favorite. People say they're seeing that a lot, which is wonderful, and that's 60%. 20% is A, to identify things and work areas, followed by to instruct people on how things work and to display the ongoing plan at only 9%.
Great, well, we have examples of all of that. So let's take a look at how you might beef up those other areas of visual management. So most of us actually have been heavily trained in visual management since we were young. So if you drive, or even if you don't, you know that traffic and roadways use a system that's in place all over the world with relative uniformity. Road signs direct us. They give us a map of how to get where we're going. And this works in every country, except when they use a different alphabet than you do. The first time I realized that was when I was running a workshop in Greece. And that was before our phones had built-in GPS. So I was a little at a loss there. But even if the sign doesn't say stop, but it's an octagon in red, you get it. Traffic lights, they use color coding and they tell us the next step in the process. My joke here is that although I thought yellow meant, when I was little, I thought yellow meant hurry up, since my father always took yellow as a challenge to get through the intersection before the light turned red. But we're so familiar with red, yellow, green color coding that it's a staple of modern visual management. Hazard lights, right? They give us the status of automobiles around us, that they might be moving slower, something might be wrong. Highway lanes, parking lot lanes, they give us guidance on where to drive and where to park. If you've ever pulled into a parking spot and gotten annoyed because somebody went over the lines, right? That's because you know the rules of visual management, in being able to see where things go and what's normal and not normal. Visual management should help you spot abnormalities in a process or a work area. Another shock I got was working in Egypt. They don't really use lanes in the road. Everyone seems to just sort of move fluidly back and forth across the highway. They rely on audio guidance. They're all tapping the horn lightly, sort of to say, I'm on your left, I'm on your right. I kept thinking I was hurtling toward death, but it seems to work. Even if there were bikes and livestock in the road, they have a completely different system. But for us, the question is, can you navigate your work area like the roadways or an airport? Let's review some of the reasons that we need visual management. So do you have a junk drawer? And if you do, can you find anything in it? This one over here is a before picture in what the hotels call back of the house. This was a banqueting project. This was the before picture. So even if you don't work in a hotel, you know that once an area in your workspace has random stuff dumped in it, it just becomes a junk pile. And what about your desktop? You know, does it look like this? Do you know what's there? Do you know how to find files? So we need to know when things go wrong, and visual management makes abnormal conditions stand out. It helps us continuously improve our process. Since we can see what's wrong, we know what has to be fixed. It pushes problem solving and decision making down in an organization at the point where the work is being done. It reinforces standard work. So what is the method we've agreed on to do something? If we have a visual of standard work, then people can see what to do. They'll follow the best practice. It reduces the need for training, since a visual workplace educates the workforce on where things go and how a process works. Knowing what to do reduces process areas, which reduces the waste of defects and delays. It keeps people safe. You know, if it's obvious what to do and what not to do, people don't put themselves in harm's way. It also helps leaders monitor whether people are following standard work. It lets them know where to focus process improvement to help and support people in following the process. So 83% of what we learn is visual. We interpret visual 60% faster than text. Visual information improves learning by 400%. It increases learning since the workplace is teaching you. So let's start with the first question that visuals answer. What is it? We need to be able to see what we're looking for. Knowing what you're looking at means you don't waste time searching. I recently observed a housekeeping process where the housekeeper had to go out of the guest room. She had to go down the hall to get the right sheet because she didn't have the right sheet. And she had to go there 2 separate times. So the sheet initially that was there was wrong. And then she had to go back 2 more times to get them. And there was a racking system. It said queen size and king size, but they were mixed up. And one of the other observers that I was standing with said that in their hotel, they have different colored stitching on the sheets so you can identify at a glance, that's queen, that's king. So they used visuals to mistake proof and help guide people. So you want to make it clear what's in each container or what's in each area. You know, is there color coding or a way to do it? One of our colleagues puts all her holiday decorations in red and green bins in the attic. Easy to spot, only once a year, but she knows immediately where it is. Don't make people search for items. Let people know at a glance where to find what they need. This is often one of the benefits of conducting a 5S procedure in a work area. Everything gets labeled. There's a separate webinar for 5S, so we won't dive into it, but it's a great way to build visuals into the workplace. If you look at these are 2 labeling system for bins, right? So on the left, the bins don't say Legos. They don't say stuffed animals. They just have the pictures because the workers here are little kids, hopefully, right? So this technique is not just good for kids. Visuals are faster methods of communicating and they're universal. The bins on the right have text, you know, sort of garbage and recycling, but they also have the icons that are universal and colors that have become universally understood. So don't reinvent the wheel. See what standards are already out there and use them. These are some after photos. That's that same project that was going on in the banqueting area for that hotel project. They use both photos and text again. Photos are key with a multicultural staff. And the photo also guides you to see when something's out of place. So the photos are of, you know, ramekins and plates, certainly not a large metal bowl. So if you look at that, you would say, well, somebody has misplaced this item. And that's one of the jobs of visual management, to show you when things are not the norm. This is also from a hotel. I did a lot of work with hotels. This one, they're using a shadow board to instruct housekeeping on where things go. And this is a pretty sophisticated system. The shampoo and the soaps are also color coded to match this shadow board. If we look at the shadow board without any products, they've also added text to reinforce the instructions. So they've used color and shape and text. You know, it's okay to add text, but make sure the colors and the shapes do the heavy lifting of identification. So this was kind of fun, but simple one. Although I didn't like the fact that they didn't leave me much room for my stuff. It's too small. All right, this is sent to us by Carlos Mantell. Thank you, Carlos, if you're on the line. He's got forms in stacks here. He's also pasted the form so you can see what's in each stack. You can see the inventory levels. You can see if any of these stacks is low. This is a rudimentary form of a Kanban and a supermarket. Those are 2 visual techniques. We're not going to go into those methods now, but those are great ways to build powerful visual management systems. And even if you're not familiar with you know, what is a Kanban, or what is this other term being used, supermarket. It's really easy to set up and understand. You get it. All right, you look at this and it makes sense. There's not a single sign. There's no text anywhere, but we get it. So that was really easy to set up. The next question to answer is, how are we doing? We need to know the status of our efforts. Are we satisfying the customers? We need to be able to see when things go out of the norm. We need to be able to reflect, how did we do yesterday? And what are we going to do differently today? Is our standard work effective? Is there any waste? In this example here, they're tracking the wait time for customers. Well, there's clearly a problem. Standard work is not effective here, which they tackled with an improvement project. And that's the idea. We need to know, how are we doing in order to know what needs attention? So create a visual display, place it near the people who need to see it. Include only critical customer-focused information. Don't clutter. Choose key measures. Make updates, tools, accessible, pens, markers, erasers. Status boards are great opportunities for team meetings. Incorporate short, regular huddles around the board. People often do that every morning with status boards. Give people a chance to respond with short-term and long-term fixes. These are great tools for leader standard work. Again, we're not covering that here, but that's another great avenue for using visuals to support a problem-solving culture. So ensure that those performing the work are the first to detect and address a drop in the performance. Because the reality is, reports, you know, things that are online on a shelf or in a computer, they're not helpful because no one's looking at them. This visual communication, again, better than text. This is something that Tracy and I saw at Mifune Manufacturing. They're a tier 2 Toyota supplier in Japan. We were just there this past May. They use the classic pie chart to indicate worker knowledge. So the matrix lists key workers and then cross-references them with key tasks. An empty pie chart means they have not been trained on that task. And as the pie chart fills up, they move from untrained to trained to proficient to someone able to train others. So this is a cross-training matrix. And we've got a free download template if you want a tool like this. This one's printed, but you could create one that people fill in by hand as they progress. And everyone understands pie charts. It's a really easy way to communicate how we're doing with knowledge building. This is an example of a status board from Burger King. They display the status of takeout orders. And one of the impacts of seeing this is that customers, fewer customers come up to the counter to ask, you know, where's my burger? There's less interruptions for the staff, which means there's faster service for customers. This clock, with a similar impact, was put in the cockpit of a JetBlue flight that I was on. And there were ongoing delays due to weather, flight control, and they were adjusting the clock for the passengers throughout the flight. So it's easy to see the expected landing time. And it probably cut down the same way on the number of times the passengers stopped the flight attendants to ask about the ETA. So there's less interruptions, results in faster service overall. It's customer-focused visuals in this case. This job status board is one that Tracy and I saw up at Zingerman's mail order business. They are in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They run tours if you're interested. They have an amazingly fun and interesting visual workplace. This one shows you the number of mistakes. That's 12. That's in fairly big type. They've completed 186 work orders out of 495. Some of the writing is small and we're not familiar with the process, but you can guess the meaning of the pie chart. You know, another pie chart, simple visual. So green is done, black is to be completed, and red is mistakes. So red, yellow, green, always understood. Green's normal, red shows you what's not the norm. If you're on the line, you don't want to see red. And if you see it, you might want to be part of coming up with a fix. This was all on the wall, visible to everybody. Workers can see the objective. They see the total work orders. That's a critical measure for them. This one uses a billboard as a status board. These are 3 different hospitals in Florida. And they're using first an eye-catching upside down bicycle to communicate accident, right? They don't use the word accident, but you get it. They use a nice big type to let us know the emergency room wait times at each hospital. And they provide info on how to get these wait times yourself if you're not near this sign. So there is text there, but it's secondary. So the bike is the big eye catcher, and then there's information for you at different levels. They use a lot of good visual techniques here, very eye-catching and really helpful. There are also job status boards. These are sort of forms of job status boards. This one is a simplistic assessment of employee happiness. You know, the idea is if you're feeling good, you know, or meh or bad, you can put a hash mark. And the good part about this one is that employees control this board. They're the ones using markers that are handy to update everybody else on how they're feeling. A manager can see this board and get a sense of workers' well-being, but they don't know who's not doing well or why. So it's fairly rudimentary. This one's something Tracy and I saw also on the trip to Japan, also at Mifune Manufacturing. The status board lets you know the quality level achieved by each employee. So including photos also is a really common technique in Japan factories, schools, and hospitals. There's another factory where they asked employees to say how they were feeling. They recorded on a board whether they got a good night's sleep or had a cold coming on. They didn't just get, you know, red, yellow, green. They really wanted to know how people were doing so they could switch them to lighter tasks. This was a way of handling safety. It also showed a lot of respect for their people. And this last one was a fun one that Tracy put in that she saw in a cubicle on one of her job sites. But these are all giving you status. How are we doing? This example also from Mifune, where we introduced a new concept called andon. Andon is a Japanese word for paper lantern. These are visual and often audible alerts to problems that require action. So again, not going into depth on andon techniques, but they're really easy to understand. The screen here was lighting up with the number of the station that needed supplies. Also accompanied by some specific music. It was a very lively shop floor we were walking through. So they lit up the station, this lit up ID, sort of number 5, is a call to someone to bring materials to station number 5. And the operator at station number 5 is the one who pushed the button to indicate this need for materials. Or if they didn't need materials, but there was some other problem, this light lit up, but a different sound, a different song played, basically. So audio is another big tool that we're not exploring today, but it's a great idea to engage as many of the senses as you can. Next question the visual management answers is, how does it work? What is the process here? What comes first? What comes second? If in your youth you were involved in a job in a fast food franchise, you've probably been exposed to some really solid visual management. It's clear where orders go, where each type of burger goes, when the fries are done, what keys to hit on a cash register to add, you know, a small Coke versus a large Coke. There's a picture of each item right on the key. They don't have enough time to conduct all the training given how much turnover they expect to have. So they need a workplace that speaks for itself. So again, guidelines were to post step-by-step instructions, indicate the area on the floor where equipment belongs, place arrows on the floor or walls to show how the process flows, include pictures of parts, materials, equipment. So this first image comes from the ski rental shop at Mammoth Mountain, where Tracy was with her family. Mammoth provided a step-by-step instruction and signs for renting boards and skis, which Tracy, I know, appreciated because she was keen to spend more time on the mountain than in the rental shop.
Absolutely.
And the second one is, we found out Tracy has a little leaguer too. Tracy posted this because she was appreciating the signage and the pipe. And now that you're getting savvy about this, can you think of how they could have improved this sign? So there's a sign, it's telling you where to put the softballs or baseballs. I can't remember what's going on with Little League. But they could also have put a picture of a softball on that sign, right?
Correct. Baseball, yeah. Yes, a baseball.
Yeah, so you can add text, that's okay, but people get visuals much faster. This one also from Mifune, the standard work instructions are posted right where the operator is doing the job. That's the key, is to post those visuals close to where the work is being done. Keep standard work right at the point of use. Same with this example from the Red Cross Hospital in Ashikaga, Japan. This equipment and signage is posted right outside a patient room, close to where the work is being performed. There's text, but there's images too. I knew right away what it was, regardless of my knowledge of Japanese. And having it right at the entrance helps workers and visitors form the same habit, right? Keeping your hands clean reduces spread of disease. So these visuals also are about improving safety. This back to that banqueting project at the large hotel. This was up in Toronto. The basic container they use for plates on wheels is called poker chips. It holds plates, but if you've ever played poker, you get the nickname. There's signage to show what goes here, but there's also a painted line on the floor. So the line helps keep the walkway clear. But when I look at this, I think, well, what if all the poker chips are being used and they're not against the wall? How would you know which was the walkway and which was the place to store them? They could do more here. You know, they could maybe put images of poker chips right on the floor. So that would help people and telegraph to a new employee where to roll each piece of equipment. So they've done a lot and they can keep doing more. On the left is a shadow board that is a knife drawer. My husband, who is not in the process improvement business at all, built this. And although I gave him a hard time about the signage on our front door, his knife drawer is so impressive that a lot of my colleagues have photographed it over the years. It is a great behavior modifier, since if I see any empty slot, I look for the missing knife immediately and I put it away. And the same with this example of from a wonderful teacher we know, Sarah May. She lets her students know where things go. In this case, something's missing. And this last one is a shoe Kanban. The arrows are pointing to empty spaces where shoes are missing. Tracy uses a shoe Kanban as a way to limit the number of shoes she buys. She has a wonderful blog on shoe Kanbans, which I highly recommend.
And I will just add that all of those spaces have been filled.
Yes, Tracy leaves no space unfilled when it comes to shoes or costumes, but that's another whole webinar we're going to do on Tracy's costumes. All right, so this is a kind of visual that becomes part of standard work. Standard work is the detailed description of how to perform a given task. Visuals like these outline where things go. This is a tray at the Tokyo airport. And since each airport and country has their own airport screening system, it's a great way to quickly let travelers know how to get through security. So some of us are airport warriors, but a lot of people are not familiar with systems, and certainly not with how different the systems can be from airport to airport. So if you've ever been in a line where it wasn't clear and officials had to constantly correct people, and you were worrying about making your flight, you appreciate how helpful a visual like this can be. And this next one, another piece of standard work, comes from the Suda Elementary School in Japan that Tracy and I visited. The children brought their own chopsticks, their own thermoses, and they placed them in the format given for standard work on their desks. And this schematic was really helpful, and we watched them serve each other lunch and clean up, which was just an amazing feat. And there's zero waste, and that was just kind of wild to look at. There's a detailed blog on our site about our Japan trip, but I also recommend that if you're interested. There's a lot more there in detail about what happened at these different places. More examples of how things work. These visuals resulted from 5S efforts. If you have not done a 5S, that's a great place to start to build visual management. This one on the left is from a hotel maintenance area. This one here helps kids know where to put their bikes. You could add text to make it clear if the bike wasn't there, that's what goes in those places. Another technique, if you're doing these outlines, is you don't have to paint the whole outline. You could just use corners. People immediately respond to that as a cordoned off area as well. You could also just add a picture of a bike instead of saying bike. Again, more visuals, the less text, the more powerful your instructions are. This is another example from Zingerman's Mail Order Center. This also a shatter board was designed to guide employees who were packing one of their most popular gift boxes. And notice how the photo of the coffee cake on the right is way more effective than the shapes with the product numbers. They have 100 employees, but they have to hire an additional 400 temporary employees every holiday season just to get through their orders. And they don't have time to do a lot of training. They are busy, so they rely on visuals. And shadow boards like these help cut down on the mistakes, and that's the ones they were tracking on that status board that we showed you. So I really like that example. The last question we're dealing with here is about the plan. What's next? There's a great example of this kind of board at Menlo Innovations. That's a software development company in Ann Arbor, Michigan. But Tracy and I toured. If you ever want to tour a truly visual organization, they host tours all year long. They are very fun. They have this wonderful board showing all the major tasks of all ongoing projects, along with who's responsible. And they use a super high-tech piece of yarn across the board to indicate the current day. And you can immediately see where every project is according to plan. Is it above the yarn or is it below the yarn? So I just sent, it has sensitive info on it. I couldn't display it, but the point is you do not need fancy digital displays. So show what's in store for the process. Let people know what they are responsible for. Give them a way to update the plan. This is part of a board from King County, their Financial Business Operations Division, otherwise known as FBOD. Tracy does lots of work with this group. The top row shows some of the key metrics and charts they thought were important to track. And the bottom row shows the team action items by quarter, listing what they're going to be implementing or tracking. So that's always right there in the hallway. Everybody walks by it every day, watching exactly what's happening with their processes. This one is kind of fun. This came from a project leader I was coaching. He had a big family and a busy home. So he created a family job status board. So you can see days of the week, chores, everybody's name, color-coded key. He had little heart emoji magnets for love what you did. What's key here is that everyone's involved in updating the board. They can move the magnets and indicate what's been done. He said it wasn't expensive to put together, and the kids were mostly engaged with this. I think there was lots of parental support on this, but I was impressed with this one. This one is known as a Kanban board. There are many ways to construct these, but the basic idea is what's pictured here. You've got tasks that are to do, that's that top lane. You've got a second category that people are actively doing, that's the middle lane. And then a final category on the bottom where tasks get moved when they're done. And I use this during a yearly family work day at my parents' house. I used to have a master job list, and people would stop and ask me what remained to be done. People were grabbing my shoulder all day long. We've had over 30 people at these events, so I knew I had to come up with a better plan. Once I created this Kanban board and I color coded it, like house, yard, carpentry, then people stopped asking. They either joined jobs in progress, like there was a big team chopping wood, or they grabbed a new job and they put it in the doing pile. Of course, the most fun is when people come back to put their completed chores in the done pile. I left Post-its, markers, even sticky dots for people to add, change, whatever they wanted. At one point, they started putting red sticky dots on the really tough jobs, like hauling an old freezer out of the basement. Even they knew that red meant bad or problem. This is used a lot in software, but these are pretty basic, again, to understand and good visual management. So let's recap. The first question of visual management is, what is this? We use visual management to identify parts, materials, work areas. It lets people know, what am I looking at? The next question it answers is, how are we doing? We use it to inform ourselves and others of the process status. Are we meeting our goals? Are we falling short? And if so, where? The third question is, how does it work? We use visuals to instruct people on how a process works, how to navigate work areas, where to put things away, to organize storage, and see what things are missing. And lastly, it answers the question, what's next? We use it to plan. Are we working according to plan? Are we behind? Where are we behind? So let's hear a little bit about your experience. This one, I'd like you to enter into the chat tab. What is the best use of visual management that you've seen? I'd love to hear some examples from those of you on the call. And then how about you, Tracy? What's the best use of visual management you've seen?
Well, I always like visual management that helps me to do something easier. So the two examples that I really like are when I go to a baseball stadium and I go to use the restroom and they actually let me know which restroom is occupied.
Oh, that's key.
Right, you know, like the flow is so much better when you've got visual management of, instead of having to look under the stalls to see if you see legs. I mean, it's so annoying. So I'm always happy to see visual management in those. And surprisingly, it's not everywhere. For example, airports. Airports don't have a standard use of that. And I really wish they would.
I hear you, Tracy. I hear you. What about the audience? What about our participants?
Well, let's see. Our audience is saying small red lights, red or green in parking lots. It's to show if it's full or not, which I love. Laura was telling me that at Toyota in San Antonio, they have red plastic cups on top of a pole in the work area while they're running low on material, different color cups for different needs. That's always a great use of solo cups. Let's see what else. Safety visuals are something that people, Abanji said that he likes. Cable pegboard that was labeled, as well as visual instructions for cord wrapping, which is great. Also, Lisa shares, I've probably already shared this in the past, but my friend's hubby hung a tennis ball from a fishing wire in the garage, and when it hits the friend's windshield, she knows to go no further.
That's a great one. I love that. We actually have a photo of one of those. I love it.
And then Ashley shares, doctor's offices have different flags outside the rooms to know when patient is ready or needs labs or something.
Ah, great. Really
So
good.
Good too. And then I'll just cap on that and say that my other favorite use of visual management was when we went to the AME conference. It's 2,000 people, and they actually had people standing with signs that say, seats are here. And we just walked right to those people every time. It was awesome.
Good point. Love it. That was great. I loved it too. Well, thank you guys. Those are great examples. We're going to come back to the idea of examples from you toward the end of this. But let's just cap off the guidance with these 4 rules of thumb. Keep it simple, make it big, put it where people can see it, let people change it. Simple is good. Use colors, use accepted standards like red, green, yellow. Green for good, red for bad. Use photos instead of text. If there's text, boil it down. I love the Mark Twain quote, sorry for such a long letter. If I'd had the time, I'd written a shorter one. It takes time to boil things down, but you're being helpful when you do it. Make it big. Most of us don't have a background in graphics. Handwriting is generally problematic, so use a printer for signage. Once you have a sign, have an outside observer tell you if it's big enough. It didn't work with my husband, but maybe you'll have more luck with your coworkers. If you have high ceilings in a warehouse, there are guidelines on height versus size. Allow 1 foot off the floor for every inch of sign height. So if a sign is 24 inches tall, it can be no higher than 24 feet off the ground, right? You can't have things up too high. So signage has to look professional. If it's not looking professional, people often ignore it. Put it where people need it. Integrate visuals at points of use, like on a piece of equipment. Universal information goes in public, well-trafficked places. Outline where things go on a board. Indicate the process flow on the floor. Use tape. Just make sure if it's where it will make a difference. The opposite is things being stored in a shared drive or stuck in a folder where nobody can see it. And lastly, allow people to change it. This is key. People who do the work need to maintain the visuals. Enable people to keep process information current. If you let people put their fingerprints on the visuals, they'll feel a sense of ownership. I like that idea of fingerprints. Unlike signage, choose low-tech options like whiteboards and markers. Let people make updates manually. Create a simple change process so everyone can offer better visual management ideas. If people are not part of the visual management process, two things are going to happen. One, they won't be as engaged in maintaining it, so you won't know the true process status. And two, it will never improve. You won't get the current best practice. So a lot of people are relieved when companies institute visuals, but since an underlying goal is to make problems visible, it might lead to defensiveness. Not every workplace is ready to expose problems. These are some typical reactions to new visual systems. People might blame others for process problems. People might resist these techniques as manufacturing only. They might get defensive about process stats being public that maybe don't reflect on them well, or that's how they perceive it. Oh, they may assume it's temporary. This will all just go away. So as with all aspects of creating a problem-solving culture, you really need leadership support. Leaders have to be engaged. If they're not visual management, it will become wallpaper, right? When issues appear, we need to say, we have a problem, not you have a problem. We also need to have courage. Don't give up. Keep using it. Turn it into a daily habit. Get permission. Let people change it, adapt it, make it better. That's part of respecting your people. Get permission from your upstream partners to point out problems that are coming from them. And then give permission to your downstream partners to point out problems to you, right? So internally, we are experiencing the problems of other parts of our organizations. And then give it time. You know, let people get used to it. This is there's an entire set of visual tools and processes called leader standard work that addresses the leader's role in using visual management. We'll touch on that later. In the meantime, we'd like to hear about your challenges with our last poll. So let me come over to the poll and launch the second one here. Okay, so Tracy, how about you? What's the biggest challenge that you see in your experience with visual management?
So the one I see that is the most crippling is C, leadership does not enforce the system. So, you know, sometimes they have really good intentions and they let people that are going to be using the visuals create the visuals, but then they're not enforcing use of the visuals and they're not necessarily using them themselves. So as we all know, leaders dictate what people pay attention to. And so eventually if the leader doesn't pay attention, nobody pays attention. And so that's a slow, unfortunate demise of something really good.
Yeah. No, I think that's, as you say, the word is crippling. So let's see what these guys had.
So number 8, letter A, we don't have enough of it, 58%, which is great. Followed only by C, leadership does not enforce the systems we have. And then we have systems, but they're not always followed at 16%, with D being the last. Workers are not allowed to update displays, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's only happening 3% of the time.
Yeah, well, not having enough of it, good problem, always easy to add. Leadership is a tougher one to deal with. But thank you for sharing your experience, guys. That's helpful. So here's a nice example that helps with buy-in. This board was one Tracy and I saw at the Red Cross Hospital in Ashikaga, Japan. It's a place where the nurses can post their photos of themselves with a little bit about themselves. And it's a great example of using visuals to identify who are the nurses. And families have come up to the board to get to know who's caring for their loved ones, which is really lovely to see. This photo comes from Ina Foods in Japan. They manufacture food products from agar, or brown seaweed. This photo came from a Kaizen board that was in the cafeteria, where workers contribute with improvement suggestions. The one pictured here would make a process safer. The employees is instituting a stable step, so workers are not stepping on rollers. This is just one example, but the board was covered with great ideas. And also you could see where in the process each improvement was. They all included pictures so people knew what was being planned. It's important to highlight the human touch, respect, and involve your people. So visual management should make it easy to answer the question, what should be done here? Is there a process? Is standard work being adhered to? Is it delivering value to the customer? Do we know what's coming? If the answer is no to any of these, it's time to revisit visual management. So within the next week, I would say a good thing to do is to download this template and use it to assess your current workspace. It's Visual Management 20 Questions, and it'll guide you through applying the concepts we covered in this webinar. If you want to learn more about some of the techniques I referenced, you can check out single modules like 5S or Kanbans. Kanbans in supermarkets is one, standard work and leader standard work, and a lot of separate pieces of leader standard work like task boards. And next question for you is, do you have examples of visual management? You just described some, and we're always on the lookout for great examples. So if you have something you're willing to share, send us photos. We've got a huge learning community, and they're always interested in how others solve problems. Back to my ongoing package delivery problem at our house. I presented my idea to my husband. My improvement was make a big sign, put an image of a package and an arrow, and this would make our house stand out, and it would cause the delivery people to walk to the back door. But my husband pointed out that it wouldn't make our house look as nice. And this time, he's right. So every once in a while, we deal with a road package up front. We can handle it. So we've given you an introduction to visual management, and I hope you're able to put some of these ideas to immediate use and then seek out more information. It's a huge arena. There's lots to learn. But we covered what is visual management, why does it matter, what questions does it answer, what does it look like, and what are some good guidelines. And now we want to give you a chance to ask questions. And while you guys come up with questions and put them in the chat area, Tracy and I are going to give you a little more info about what's coming up. If you're interested in a free 1-hour introduction to Lean Six Sigma to help others quickly understand the benefits, you can check out our 1-hour white belt training. Like all our courses, it's engaging, easy to understand, makes it fun to learn. It'll help you see the world with new eyes and jump start anybody's Lean Six Sigma journey. You may want to recommend it to colleagues. It's also fully online, self-paced, take you about an hour to complete. You learn what Lean Six Sigma is, why organizations use it, and some starter tools like 5S that I've mentioned and 8 Wastes. Certification optional for $99, but because you're watching this webinar, you get a coupon code of 20 visual, and you get a 20% discount on this and all courses. So start a free trial on our website. Go to goleansixsigma.com, courses, white belt. And just get more training, dive in there. This one is Tracy and I at the AME conference she just mentioned with our book, which is both an ebook and a paperback available on Amazon. We provide a basic tool set of 35 tools that get you from bad to better process performance. We give you examples, we give you instructions, short paths around common potholes. This thing is done in the analogy of a road trip. We also give you sightseeing options when you want to learn more. So we think it's awesome, right, Tracy?
Absolutely. And a lot of people think it's awesome. We got a lot of people coming to get the book at the booth. Yeah,
and this is becoming standard for a lot of training organizations. They give it to all their learners. And upcoming webinar, Tracy, tell them about what's coming up next month.
So I will be covering a webinar called How to Deploy Lean Six Sigma in Your Organization. Most people think training is the first step, and that it is not the first step. And so we talk about how to start off on the right foot with your organization, especially if you finally got leadership to decide, yes, this is something that we want to do. So that's really what we're going to be talking about. And it's also great if you have an ongoing program, but you feel like you need to revitalize some of it or innovate some of it.
I'm looking forward to that one, Tracy. That is great. And how about describing a little bit about your interview with Josh Beaudry?
So this is our last, no, is this our last podcast?
No, it's
We
the
got one
10
more.
ultimate, second to last.
We got second to the last podcast with Josh Beaudry. He's the president of Lipstick Skateboards, and he really helped us learn how robotic process automation, RPA, really works for administrative processes. So I was really happy to hear his presentation at OpX and really to interview him on not only how they're using RPA, but also how they're helping impoverished children all over the world with free skateboards.
Yeah, that was wonderful watching him. That was great.
It was.
Okay, that brings us back to questions from you guys. We got a few minutes. So Tracy, what do you see for questions?
So I am looking, and now we have one question. I only see one question so far. So I'm going to go ahead and ask it. And if anybody else has additional questions, please put them in. So this one is, are you going to have more in-depth sessions about visual management?
It's a great question. Go ahead. What were you going to say, Tracy?
I guess she wants more of it.
No, I love that because, you know, you and I talked about this. It is such a humongous world. Like we could do a deep dive on visual controls. There's so many great aspects of visual management that we could easily do that. So I like that as an idea. I definitely got my interest sparked while I was doing this because I told Tracy I had to weed out so many examples that I could have put in here, and I had to pull them out. Otherwise, you know, we would not have the time to cover it. So I like your idea, and I'm going to definitely consider that.
Okay, and we did get one more question, and that question is, at what limit does excess visuals become harmful?
That's a great point too, because you don't want clutter. You want it to be clear what's happening. So I don't know if you've ever had this where there's some storefronts where as I'm walking in, somebody has posted a number of different signs on the front, like don't park in front of this window, and you know, delivery, please come in the back door. They've got so much signage there that it starts to look comical, and it becomes so busy I don't know where to look. And that is something you should always be assessing, is have I hurt the ability for people to learn from this workspace from making it too busy? It may be that you've got too much text. You may be trying to load too many ideas and visuals into one spot. And I think the best way to test this, and we do this with our processes all the time, is what does the new person think, right? Take somebody who's not gotten used to it. You know, some of this can be like that concept of boiling the frog. You put the frog in the cold water and slowly heat it up, and they don't realize they're boiling. So if you're in a workspace, you might not even notice the clutter happening around you. It just keeps growing without really noticing. But ask the new person.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, and one more, I think it'll be a quick response. Can visual management be implemented before actual process improvement?
Yeah, it'll help you identify what to improve. It's a great technique to start off with. Always. I sometimes say 5S the place before you even start tackling improvement projects.
Okay, and then Lisa Goldberg does ask about, she has a cluttering problem at home. How can she use Lean Six Sigma to keep it up? I would say look at our 5S webinar, The Joy of Tidying Up with Lean Six Sigma. It's a spinoff of Marie Kondo's show.
Look at that and then search on all of our 5S in the home examples. There's a ton on our website. They are wonderful. So, and maybe you can add one. But great having visual management with you guys today. Thank you for joining us. Any more questions, you know how to contact us and download anything from our website. Thanks, everybody. Take care. See you next month.
Thank you.